I'll take you through business continuity management. And really, what is business continuity management? It's in simple terms, it really is that. How do I manage my business for continuity when there's a crisis? So it's really the ability to ensure the continuity of your key processes at an acceptable level and limit the impact of not having people on site. So people, suppliers, and so forth, not having your businesses continue. That really is business continuity. Now, what is the purpose for business continuity management? Typically, it's to ensure that continuity of your time-critical businesses. Even when there is a crisis or disruption, it really ensures continuity. It helps to ensure your management of your corporate assets that you have, whether it's plant and machinery, buildings, and so forth. It minimizes the impact of an incident. And so an incident like coronavirus and so forth, it's really to minimize the impact on your revenues and your profit. And it's really to train your staff and manage your people during this process. Now, why is business continuity very important? I don't know whether a lot of you saw this article on the Business Daily that said 75% of small businesses will collapse as a result of coronavirus. There was a warning that 75% of small businesses are likely to collapse, and a lot of them say they lack credit buffers and other resources to survive the slowdown in terms of customers and so forth. And so business continuity is really to help you see, how do I operate at a minimized scale, or how do I reorganize my business to really be able to face the crisis and still continue and not necessarily shut down. So the lens here is continuity. It's not necessarily shut down. I've had some people say, I'm not sure whether I will survive and so forth. So we are maintaining a lens of continuity as we look at business continuity management. Now, typically, I'll try and make this very simple because of the audience. Typically, business continuity has 5 key phases. Really, the first phase, which is phase 0, is really for you to understand the context of your organization. One plan for an organization is not a cut and paste for the other organization. So really, it's for you to contextualize your business in terms of the processes you have, the products you deal with, how you're geographically dispersed, and so forth. The first and second phase is really what I'm going to cover, and then Wilmot will cover a lot of the other phases. Now, the first and second phase is really about, one, the business impact analysis. So you have to step back and look at your business and understand, okay, so how has my business really been impacted? So that is really the first step. And the second step is really, what are all the risks and choices that I'm facing, and which decisions do I really make? That's a risk assessment. So I'll tackle business impact analysis and risk assessment. And then after you retrospect on the risk and the impacts that your business has gone through, then you think about, what are the recovery strategies I will employ, and what does my plan then look like? And then you validate that plan and you implement. So in a nutshell, it's really that. It's not a big jargon. It's really how do I introspect, develop strategies, and move and make decisions. Now, the first step, like I said, is really understanding the context in which you operate. Now, so you have to introspect on your organization, the product and services, the processes and the tools that you have, your locations and the stakeholders. So if you're widely dispersed, if your locations are several, you have to take that into account. And one of the things I have made easier for this session is really for us to look at a typical Kenyan case study. This is a retail organization. Bear with me and follow closely. So it's a retail laundry company that basically serves people who bring clothes for wash, and then they have a centralized washing outlet where they take all the clothes there and so forth. So they have 14 outlets where customers can bring their clothes. They have 10 in Nairobi, 2 in Kiambu, and 2 in Kajiado. It has 2 centralized cleaning points through hub and spoke. Hub and spoke means it's really served, one centralized processing place served by many outlets. So they do dry cleaning and laundry, primarily targeted at walk-in retail customers. In terms of their processes and tools, now you see how you will structure your organization while you're understanding the context. It's really in terms of processes and tools. They have a human resource staff of 47, a management team of 5. They have 2 attendants in each of their retail shops that are dispersed across Nairobi. In terms of operations, the customer drops drops their clothes in the outlets between 8 and 7. This was what was happening before Corona. Then obviously orders are inspected and pre-booked, and then you get a confirmation through a point of sale system. And so every item is tagged with a unique number and barcode. I'm sure most of you have taken something to the laundry, and you're very familiar with this process. So this farm has 3 collection trucks, which collects across Nairobi every single day, all the clothes that have come, and they take it to the centralized washing place, and they tell you they will actually clean within 48 hours, but they obviously have an express service or a same day service. So payment is either made at booking or collection, and so forth. So this just gives you an idea of how you have to introspect on your processes. So in terms of finance, they have a POS system, PGCO machines, then they have daily collection summaries at the collection outlets and so forth. In terms of their stakeholders, they have landlords because they have rented their retail outlets where the customers drop their clothes, they're all rented. They have suppliers, so detergents, the tags and so forth. And then obviously they have bankers who finance them, especially their assets and so forth. Now, once we are done with that first step, where you really just understand what context am I dealing with, the next step is for you to conduct the business impact analysis, and I'll make it very, very simple. Now, it has 8 key steps, and business impact analysis is function and process based. So what happens is that you just don't look at it at a function level. So you see business functions are those ones that I've shown on my right. So some of you have research and development, your production and quality of sales, and so forth. It's not, you just don't focus on the function, you go a level deeper and now focus on the processes within those functions. So the first step is really understand the processes that are performed in each department. So for example, let's take one of their key processes for the laundry. So one of their key processes is distribution and logistics. So they have trucks that have to collect clothes, dirty clothes, every single day and take them to the centralized cleaning place. That's their distribution and logistics. And then once they are cleaned, also drop them back at the retail outlets. This is across Nairobi. So you have to dig deeper in the distribution and logistics function. They have the dispatch process, the collection process, and the drop process. So you go a level deeper. You look at all your processes. So you have to do that for research and development, production and quality and so forth. And the whole overall idea of the business impact analysis is to actually identify which are my key critical processes that I need to focus on. Where should my decision and efforts really lie? And so if we look at the laundry company, once you have understood the processes, for example, for distribution and logistics, the next step is to assess the various impacts of disruption. So with coronavirus, obviously, distribution was impacted. It was impacted in many ways. So you have the curfew, which says you cannot go. They need to shut down by 4 p.m. in terms of movement within Nairobi. You have the social distancing within the outlets and so forth. And so you have to assess the various impacts on the various processes. So you go into distribution and assess, okay, so if because of coronavirus, that means that my distribution is affected in terms of time, and it's also affected in terms of perhaps the amount of time I can spend on the road and so forth. Number 3 is assess the maximum acceptable outage for each of these processes. What that basically means is if there's an incident, if there's a disruption, what is my maximum acceptable outage? How long can I allow that process to go without it disrupting completely my business? So if you look at the laundry business, they promise the customers 48 hours, your clothes will be cleaned within 48 hours. Now, Now, that means that in terms of distribution, they have to collect it the same day, and they have to deliver it perhaps the next day. And what that basically means, the maximum acceptable outage for the distribution and the logistics side of things is essentially nothing more than a day, because you need a day to clean and so forth. So maybe at least 24 hours or less you have to have collected. So this process, for you to promise the customer that everything will be delivered within 48 hours, it means the maximum acceptable outage is only a day. So you do that for all your processes and determine, so for how long, what is my maximum outage limit for each of these processes? Because if you don't address that, it then affects your entire business. The next step is to understand the people, technology, the vendor, and the resources enabling each of these processes. So in terms of the distribution and logistics, I've only picked one process to really explain this. You have the trucks. In terms of resources, you have the trucks. In terms of technology, you have the POS system that's on the collection side, and etc. You have the truck drivers in terms of the people and so forth. So you have to understand who is impacted in this process. The next step, which is step 5, is to identify all the internal and external dependencies of each process. So it's really who depends on this process internally and externally. So internally, in terms of the distribution process, it's really the retail outlets, the attendants at the retail outlets depend on this. The people at the cleaning shop depend on the distribution. If there's no distribution, clothes will not be cleaned and so forth. External dependencies, you have the infrastructure, the road networks and etc. that affects this process. So you go deep and determine which are the dependencies. Now, once you do that, you will derive the critical processes of every department based on their derived maximum acceptable outage values. So let me explain that. So you'll find that each of these business functions have processes that have lower outage, acceptable outage. So for example, like account management, accountancy, this is done perhaps once every month. The financial statements, the monthly statements are done once every month or once weekly. So you can say the maximum acceptable outage in this case maybe is 2 weeks, a week, depending on your organization. So once you go through each of your departments and look at the processes, you will determine which is the maximum acceptable outage in terms of time for all your key processes, and then you'll be able to determine based on that which are my critical processes that I need to address. So that's really step 6. And then step 7, you ensure that you have taken into account all the dependencies of that process. So like the distribution, the dependencies, the retail outlets, and so forth, you take into account that. And then you have to validate, of course, this with your department. So usually business impact analysis is a collaborative process that happens between teams and so forth. So it's not necessarily only done by the CEO, it's done collectively by the team. Now, best practice is really that this process is done ahead of a crisis. Like, so many corporates have primarily done this before. I'm not sure many SMEs have ever done a business continuity plan before, but it's supposed to be done how it was envisioned, is to be done before a crisis. So then you estimate, and so that when a crisis hits, you're able to see what decisions you take. But coronavirus was here with us. We all say it was unprecedented and so forth. So the question is then, how do you go back to your processes and look at which are your critical processes and the decisions you really have to take? I hope that was clear. And so after you do the business impact analysis, you have to do what is called a risk assessment. So assess all your risks. These are like, they're independent but conjoined. So assess all your risks. So with coronavirus as a key business disruption, you have the virus infection as a key risk. So the potential of your employees being infected, you have the safety and security of physical sites. This is not for everyone, but for some of you, you have some of the risks in terms of the impact of your business and threats from time curfews and so forth, customer unavailability. So for those of you in retail, you assess some of these risks. So for example, the laundry, a lot of people were now working from home. So who's really going to clean laundry, and so forth. So customer availability is a key strength. And when you're doing the risk assessment, you're only trying to answer 2 questions. Let me make it simple. How do I know which risks to focus on? And what do I do about these risks? So how do I know which risks to focus on? Because you're faced with many decisions, really, and many risks that have been brought about by the coronavirus. It's really, how do I know which risks to focus on? And so you ask yourself, so what is the likelihood or probability of a specific event? The virus infection, the likelihood is high, and that you rely on the statistics from the Ministry of Health. And what is the impact? So the impact of a virus infection on your business is really that employees will not come and so forth. And so what do I do about the risks? You either accept, you really have 4 choices. You either accept, you either eliminate it, transfer it, or mitigate it. So when you say accept, it's really you live with it. The virus, the risk of the virus infection is there. And so it's really, how do I mitigate? And you've seen people have put sanitizers and so forth. Eliminate where you can, and then transfer the risk. In the case of safety and security of physical sites, if you have insurance, it means you have transferred the risk. Now, I wanted to tie this back to the case study outcomes and really bring it home for the SMEs. So what happened in this case study, the laundry company? Because a lot of SMEs don't necessarily anticipate risk and plan for it. What happened the moment Uhuru made the announcement is a lot of people closed for 9 days. And then you quickly said, safety first, and so forth. What this laundry did, which was good, they notified all their customers that they will be closed within 24 hours. So they actually did that. So what happened is after 9 days, they reflected and chose to reopen. So sales dipped by 70% during the reopening, basically because a lot of people were not taking their clothes to the laundry because you're basically working from home. And then, so right now, as we speak, they're currently at 50% sales level, maybe because business has started picking up. So what do they do after the 9 days that they opened? They reflected and opened on a revised business continuity plan. So what most of us did, we actually did this retrospective after the event. But going forward, it's important that we actually do it in anticipation. So what did they do? So they reduced the open hours and continued to keep the clients engaged and informed. And I really loved what they did because they kept, they focused on customer retention. Some of the retail customers, some of the retail SMEs have basically left things as is. They're not engaging their previous customers and so forth. So what they did is actually call every single customers, and they have retail customers, so you can imagine, it kept them engaged that we shall be open soon and so forth. I found that very impressive. So they focused on customer retention. And then in terms of their locations, because of social distancing, they had only 1 attendant per location. And really, so that means they reduced their staff critically from 6 to 16 out of 47. So they had people proceed on leave and others on unpaid leave. One of the interesting things they also did is they took an immediate decision to close 2 outlets, really, because they said, in this case, let me eliminate risk, the risk of customer and availability of further dip in revenues. So what they said, these 2 outlets have previously not been performing so well, and the future growth potential is not really making sense. So instead of incurring overheads, they took a decision to close 2 outlets immediately, and they felt COVID would further aggravate this performance. And another thing they did is they renegotiated rent payments. Remember, they had 14 outlets. So you can imagine they had rent premiums across, and you know, laundry is in malls, and it's pretty much it's pretty much expensive in terms of rent. So what was very interesting for this team is that they didn't have a blanket rule for different landlords. Different landlords gave various restructuring methods, and that's very important to keep in mind. As I chatted with the CEO, he said it's very important to have an open mind as you negotiate, because the outcomes will be different with different people. So what happened is 5 landlords agreed on a structured repayment plan. So you can pay some now, you can pay after 2 weeks, you know, so it's structured, the same amount, but structured. One was unwilling to negotiate anything. 5 offered a 50% relief. So that means the first month during the COVID period, you don't pay 50% of the rent. And then one offered 100% waiver, which was really an angel in essence. And others offered, subsequently offered 50% for the duration of the pandemic. So these negotiations help them save money, the reliefs help them save money, and the overheads that they literally faced, because there literally no, the sales are at 70% during reopening, dipped by 70% during reopening. And then they renegotiated a 90-day moratorium, and I must commend the banks. They really supported SMEs in doing this, and really renegotiating the existing facilities. So they got a 90-day moratorium. And so when you speak to the CEO, he says they're optimistic to survive the pandemic, but uncertain about retaining 100% of both its external and external customers and its employees. So whether they will continue operating at 16 employees and the rest will never really come back is still uncertain. But one thing is for sure, the swift planning of decisions has really saved them. And that's really where I want to end my talk today. It's really about swift planning and making decisions. So whichever decisions you have to make to ensure business continuity, you can do that. Some SMEs have chosen to adopt a different business line and keep the other one on the side. But for those who really have invested in the businesses and are looking to go into the future, the 70% that I saw, that sales have dipped 74%, especially for retail clients. It's really now about how do I scale down my operations? How do I adopt a business continuity plan with a scaled down operation and still maintain and ensure that I don't go out of business? Thank you very much. So just the last slide. Sorry, Anja, just the last slide. In case you need to get in touch with us, I'd forgotten this bit, feel free to register on our website. And we are typically happy to support. Once you register, you should hear from us within 24 hours, and we shall be able to support you with simple, localized, and sustainable solutions. Thank you very much.